In the last Touchcast, we talked about Aristotle's concept of virtue and the idea that virtue is achieved by following our reason. That reason ultimately is going to lead us to do the right thing and to a state of happiness that Aristotle calls eudaimonia. Eudaimonia literally means good-souledness in Greek. And eudaimonia is a state of ultimate happiness. The idea here is that we can reach minor states of happiness through a lot of different things, right? We talked a little bit in the last video about minor states of happiness that we can reach through money, power, or fame. But Aristotle says that eudaimonia can only be reached through the practice of virtue. Now, it's kind of a wise thing if you think about it. If you find your happiness through money, power, or fame, eventually that happiness is going to be fleeting. It's going to leave you. If you really think about the way that your life works, right? If you find your happiness in that way, eventually you're going to want the latest and the greatest and the better thing. So, for example, I buy a 2013 Ferrari. Right? I'm going to enjoy that Ferrari for a little while, but eventually that car is going to lose its luster for me. It's going to make me happy for a little while, but it's not going to make me happy forever. What will make me happy forever, however, is real, good human relationships, love, right? And Aristotle says that we can get to those relationships through the practice of virtue and through becoming a good person and creating a good soul. So how do we do that? Well, Aristotle says that the beginning of the practice of eudaimonia is to learn how to follow your reason and keep your appetites in check. Your reason knows what's good and what's not. You have this innate sense of morality, according to Aristotle. But you have these appetites, these emotions that keep pulling you to one side or another. In fact, Aristotle says that if you think about the things that we normally call virtues, you'll notice that the things that we normally call vices tend to be either an excess or a deficiency of virtue. Aristotle calls this concept the golden mean. So, for example, if you take a look at the virtue of temperance, the virtue of temperance is the ability to control one's passions. A deficiency of temperance leads to self-indulgence. It leads to things like gluttony, drunkenness, etc. An excess of temperance leads to the inability to enjoy some of the pleasures of life. Courage, right? You've got that balance of courage. A deficiency of courage leads to cowardice. If I don't have enough courage, I'll be a coward. An excess of courage leads to rashness. Leads to me, basically running out in front of the vanguard and getting shot down before the battle has even begun. Ambition, right? If you have a deficiency in ambition, then you have sloth. You're not doing anything. If you have an excess of ambition, then that leads to greed. And so Aristotle would say that virtue is found in the middle, the golden mean between these two vices. So then the question becomes, how do we practice virtue? How do we become virtuous people? Aristotle gives us a number of different options here. He says, first, we ought to emulate the people around us who behave in a virtuous way. So find somebody who's courageous if you're tending toward cowardice, and try to be a little bit more like them. Find somebody who is honest, and if you're tending toward lying, and try to be like them. And the great religions of the world have given us exemplars like this, right? We have seen a lot of people wearing the bracelets that say WWJD, what would Jesus do? And the idea there is that if you follow the moral example of Jesus, then you're going to become a more moral person in your own life. He would also suggest that you need to do a real, solid self-examination. Figure out where you lack in your own moral life, and then try to move yourself back in the other direction. The bent stick remedy that Longton talks about in his book is one way of doing this. If you find yourself leaning in one direction toward vice, then bend yourself in the other direction so that hopefully you'll end up in the path of virtue. So that's a little bit more on Aristotle's virtue ethics. The next video will be on Kant's categorical imperative and looking at an action-based ethic.